Hello and welcome to Ethos Ananda Live. This is the first live stream in a long time. I'm now in an epic ancient history library. So cool. If it's your first time here, smash the like, smash the subscribe. Don't even think. Don't be a rational human. Be an animal. Just smash. Smash, smash, smash. I am here about to be joined by good friend Jim.
Hello, how are you doing?
Hey Jim, how's it going?
I'm good. That's a very snazzy backdrop. You're not actually in a mid 15th century library, are you? That looks
No,
very.
of course not, because where I actually am is on a boat.
Oh wow! Oh, brilliant! Looks very nice. Very nice.
Yes, I have acquired the rare skill of teleportation.
Good. That would be useful.
Which one's good? I really like this epic, ancient library thing.
Yeah, that was pretty eye-catching.
So I actually I'm going to turn it off now so you can see where I am. Oh wait, that might be a pain in the butt. Anyway, yeah, I'm in this abandoned downstairs apartment because my neighbors just got evicted.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm streaming now, because my roommates are upstairs just being loud, and it's just tricky getting a good time to stream. I don't have a room anymore, so I'm really moving down in the world. I have a room, but there's no walls. It's just curtains.
Yeah, because when you told me about that, I know that's probably the vibe that people are going for. It's just I think I would not be comfortable with that kind of setup. So especially with some of the things that you told me. I don't know. Do you want to talk about the incident or not? Or
Sure. I mean, I don't care. It's just crazy. So, well, first of all, why am I living in a room with no walls, surrounded by loud bachelor dudes? Well, it's a small sacrifice for a big reward. So the reward is I get to live exactly where I want to live, which is a place with clean air, clean water, far away from any city, far away from any trouble, no masks. I've even been going into Walmart without a mask. Like even these huge stores around here, like most people don't give any trouble because it's like we're in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of like Trump country, and even more important than that, this is like a spiritual community. So I'm with all my Krishna devotee friends.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's only a few more things I'd want. It's mostly just like comfort things. Like I don't care that my room doesn't have walls, because I do have visual privacy. It's only the sound privacy that matters, and it's only when I'm doing work. Because if I'm just like watching TV or like I know I don't watch TV, I watch YouTube, but if I'm like watching media, I can just put on headphones. So it's not a big deal. Anyway, here in rural North Carolina, in our little community, there was a murder recently. And I met the guy who, I mean, I've only been here for like 2 months, but the guy who murdered the other guy, I met him, hung out with him for a while. Like he was definitely a mess, like a psychological mess, and like doing drugs all the time. But he was also like, I could tell he was very like spiritually advanced. Like he loved God, and like he would cry in love a lot of times. Like it's unstable. It would be just random outbursts,
unstable tears. Yeah, and because that's what I think about these kind of things. How most of the people you attract cool, normal, just regular people, stable, looking for something, and then you attract a bunch of people who
going through the sky. You have to see this. Really, I'm serious.
Even here, I can't escape my roommates.
Yeah. And then you attract a bunch of people who mentally ill or unstable, and so for me it's just something that I don't think I'd be kind of 100% comfortable with, but I kind of admire.
I have to see what this guy saw. There's like a meteor or something. I don't know.
Oh,
I'll be right back. You can take us away. All right, Coffee, what is it?
It was like 3 dozen in a line, lights going across from horizon to horizon, and now they're all gone. They hate it. It's a phenomenon worth speaking of.
But was it a meteor?
3 dozen at least lights all in a line going in a row from horizon to horizon.
Dude.
And they eventually faded out.
That's crazy.
It's intense.
Aliens, man.
I had to share it with someone.
Well,
I was hoping
I could tell,
stay long
yeah.
enough for someone to see it with me.
Oh,
it was intense. At least 3 dozen bright lights in a line going across.
wow. All right, well, I'm going to tell the world. I'm on YouTube now.
Ask anybody if they have seen this phenomenon, please.
Sure, I will.
It's
Yeah.
anywhere in North Carolina area.
Okay.
So did you get to did you see the comment?
So he said there were 3 dozen at the same time, lights. He didn't say comets or meteors, just lights that went from horizon all the way across the entire sky to the other horizon.
Okay.
And just when I got out, I missed it.
Okay, cool.
But
Nice.
we're all weird here. Like,
Yeah.
we're all weirdos, but this is like a stable weirdo like me.
Yeah. Oh no, there are levels. I know that. Yeah, I think. Yeah, it's interesting. I think I'm definitely at a stage in my life where I just couldn't do that. But I think that I hope things continue to be all right there, and you find what you're searching for, and it continues to be stable, really, and prosperous. So you're not thinking of, you're kind of maybe thinking of getting a house, or?
Yeah, so what we have here is a lot of land and not many houses. So if I want a house, the best way is to buy land and build it.
Yeah, because to me that's like the best of both worlds. You can have your own place, your own space, and you can still get in touch with the community and stuff like that, and yeah, like you said, land is so cheap that you might as well.
And the rent here is really cheap too. That's the only reason I'm able to even consider living here. The first month I paid for rent and electric after moving here was $232.
Oh wow, cool.
Yeah, in America, that's like, it's just insane. That doesn't exist anywhere. Like even in other rural areas, there's no such thing as rent that cheap in America. It's because it's like a shared like ashram in like a spiritual community. That's the only way it can be that cheap, is because I know the owner and we're like all on the same team in like a radical sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think it's good that you're able to keep costs down, and you're obviously in a good place. So I'm glad that you've made it out there. So you wanted to talk about this stream was meant to be about rights, freedom. What were you going to talk about?
Yeah, so I
Maybe like.
prepared quite a bit actually.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, so I did write this on a blog post a while back. So I'll review that and then go in a bit more detail. But the thesis is that basically there are no rights. There's no such thing as rights. It's like racism or race. It exists if you want it to exist, but it doesn't like ontologically or metaphysically exist. So, like in the West, for instance, because we have lived with this idea that rights exist and they're super important for like centuries upon centuries. Yeah, they do. It's like very real psychologically for the average Westerner. But for the average Easterner, even in the modern world today, there's just no such thing. It just doesn't work. Like you can still, so there is ethics, there's justice, there's law, there's freedom, there's still all these other things. But rights is, as I see it now, it's kind of like the caricature I see is like the millennial snowflake who's like, these are my rights and I'm entitled, so you need to give me stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting that you were talking about, oh, well, we've had this idea for centuries and centuries. We actually haven't had this idea for centuries and centuries, because if you go back at maybe 120 years in the West, women couldn't vote. Most people couldn't read or write. Most people lived in poverty, and there was no real concept of individual freedom. You know, you were either a landowner, a factory owner, or you were a peasant, a factory worker. So I think that the idea that rights in the West have been around for a long, long time, I don't think that's the case. But I think what happened was because of things like the Second World War, coming out of that, and I don't specifically know about America, but in England, after the Second World War, you specifically had things like the National Health Service and the welfare state, and things becoming more egalitarian. We got rid of the kind of rigid class structure that had been before, because basically so many men went off to fight from all levels of society, that it just kind of broke it down. So, but like in the modern sense, yeah, it's all about rights and freedoms and feelings, and whereas, I mean, it's a simplification to say that isn't the case in the East, because if you think like it's a generational thing. If you speak to a young Cambodian or a young Indonesian and you think what's important in your life and what kind of freedoms would you like to be given, that's drastically different to a generation before, who basically.
Right. But I think the things they want is different, but I'm my initial claim now is just that their vocabulary is still, even the young generation, they're still not using the word rights commonly, because like if I were to, oh, my phone's over there, if I were to look it up in Chinese, like rights, I mean, I don't know, like it's a weird word to like even think about how to say that in Chinese. And like I'm sure they have something like it, but I just don't know. Like,
I think what you mean is not necessarily rights in the case the right to vote, the right to assemble, the right to be self-employed or whatever. What you really mean is that the Western idea, the right to be excessive, the right to just do whatever you want with no social consequence. Whereas in the East, yes, like socially, in places like Cambodia and Thailand and Indonesia, socially things are kind of looser than they may have been before, but there's still this sense of my community is watching me, my parents are watching me. There are certain things that are just off the table.
Right, right. So
Or
Jim,
if there is, yeah, go
as
ahead.
you were saying before, there's many levels. So like
Hmm.
that one you're talking about, and kind of you're probably referring to like my first example of like the millennial snowflake. Like that's
Hmm.
like the most degraded kind of like, this is my right, give it to me. But actually, most of the like what I'm really talking about though is like the Bill of Rights, the right to private property, those sorts of
Hmm.
things.
Hmm.
That's, I mean, the more classical definition. That's actually what I'm referring to. Which, like let's say like the right to private property. Did that exist in India or China 500 years ago? Like, yeah, in certain places and this and that, but it's just not something they would harp on. But
Hmm.
for now, let's just here's a cool thing we can do. I've got a bunch of ancient texts set up on my computer here. So
Yep.
here's a simple thing I did. I just Control F, just searched for the word rights in all these texts to see what would happen, and I think you'll find it's really interesting. So let's have a look.
Sure.
Let's start with the Quran. Why not?
Hmm. Yeah.
So this is the Wikipedia page, but they do actually show, verses from the Quran. So there's 20 on this whole page. Let's just jump right to it. So equality, there's 2 verses here from the Quran. They don't mention rights in the verses. It's only in
Hmm.
this like explanation here. That's a trend you'll see. Rights to own and protect property. Um, I mean, even the verses here that barely even mentions property, but okay. Do not consume each other's properties illicitly. Don't kill yourselves. God is merciful to you. These are permitted. These are not permitted. So this goes to the point I was making earlier is most of these ancient texts and ancient cultures, they do ethics. They talk about law and ethics and justice. And that's not like, you don't need to talk about rights when you're fully committed to being ethical. It's just
Hmm.
superfluous. And here's rights of minorities. Once again, the text itself never mentions rights. This is just in the bottom. Women's rights, same thing. All right, let's move on to the Bible. This one is, I was surprised because it's literally all over the place. The rights of all who are destitute. Defend the
Hmm.
rights of the poor and the needy. The rights of the poor, once again. Um, and I have another Bible here, the NIV. The what does that say? I think New International Version. And so, like, this is the Old Testament and the New Testament in one PDF. So we're gonna get a lot of stuff. The rights of a daughter, marital rights. This word shows up a lot here, but to really go deeper into this thesis I have, you'd have to like actually look at the original language, like Aramaic and ancient Greek or whatever. That's a whole
Hmm.
pain in the butt. Let's just keep moving. Bhagavad Gita, rights, all rights reserved, copyright, copyright, copyright. And here's the only time it shows up. It's not in a verse, it's in a purport to the verse. Um, and this is about, don't be attached to the result of your work. So, and part of the result of your work is proprietary rights you might have of like not just like, oh, I'm going to do a great live stream, but it's like, oh, it's only my live stream. And if anyone copies and makes clips, then they got to pay me money. So that's it. That's the only time it's mentioned in the entire Bhagavad Gita is one sentence in one purport of one verse. And I'm also curious, my own book, the Ethos book. I forgot to open it up here. Let's find it. And this one's good. And 0, which is exactly what I'm looking for. Aristotle never mentioned it. Yeah, it's, for me, it's just superfluous because, like, let's say you own some private property. We'll keep going with this example. And then someone steals your private property and you say, I have a right. It's my private property. Well, guess what? We have a law for that. It's called theft. And, you call the police and then they do the work that they can. And it's just, it's just or unjust. It's vicious or virtuous. Like ethics already takes care of everything that you might have a right for. Maybe like with free speech, it's like harder to like quantize, but if you are, ethically minded and patient enough to like write it down, codify it into law, you can do everything you need to without ever mentioning rights. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and I'm not surprised by the fact that it's mentioned so little, but I think that, and especially now, the fact that you talked about property there. I think that with the way that the world is, I think it's only going to get more intense, people's clamorings and desires to have as many rights as they possibly can, while they're essentially being, well, they're not being taken away for everyone, but there is this effort by the people in charge to kind of clamp down and take away as much as possible. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Like with COVID-19, that one of the most fundamental rights, you could say even more fundamental than free speech, was taken away from us, which is the right to move our body around freely.
Yeah.
It's like animals have this right more than we do a lot of times. Like where I am now in rural North Carolina, no, I have this right fully. And I actually have it more than animals because like the horses and the cows near me, like they can move freely within a box, within a fenced area. But I have, like, if I, get on my friend's motorbike or in a car, like I can just go wherever the hell I want. I mean, there will be consequences for that if I start off-roading and, crash and die. But yeah, it's very lax here. But if you're in like Hong Kong, which I was, last year, and you want to just go to the store and you're not wearing a mask, maybe, I mean, people will look at you like you're crazy, guaranteed minimum. And then maybe the police will come, or maybe like,
Yeah, I think that definitely living in a rural area, it's a smarter, wiser move, especially at times like this. I'm just really in the unfortunate position that I have certain conditions that mean if I do need medical attention, I need to make sure that medical attention is good quality. So, but no, I'm just hoping that things can relax in England, because right now, I think that things are not as bleak as they were, but there's still this kind of sense of people being really tightly controlled. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, you've got the wife. I'm
Yeah.
still like totally single and detached from so many things. So yeah, like considering COVID, I couldn't find a better place in the planet actually to be.
Mm.
Um, but who knows? Like Bill Gates said, I think the end of 2022 things will be like back to normal. And I actually I
Mm.
like that because like he actually is like in charge of this stuff. So,
Yeah.
so like he's like regardless of your feelings about him, like you might want to actually like take that seriously. You know?
Yeah. Well, now that he's getting divorced, he might just change his mind. He might go into
Ro-
super sad boy mode and just go crank it all up to 11. So we'll see.
I read about that. I mean, I can't like even watching like a 2 minute clip about Bill Gates. It's just like, ugh. But
Mm.
I see headlines, and I read just a little clip it on how this is probably like an Instagram meme post or something. How like billionaires will divorce so that they can like sell off like billions of dollars of
Yeah.
stocks, like no
Yeah, I
questions
heard that.
asked.
Same with Bezos. But yeah, it's as George Carlin says, it's a big club and we're not invited. So, but I think that the smart thing to do is not to get too wrapped up in the big picture. Focusing on your health, focusing on the people around you, focusing on little things you can do to maybe prepare. And I think that it definitely this whole period of time, it's really kind of like focused me um, in terms of my health, in terms of money, in terms of different possibilities like Bitcoin, even though I've not really, I've dipped my toes in that. But I've started the process with that. So I think that it's definitely forced a lot of people to really kind of think on their feet. The only thing that I really regret uh, is just not being with my family,
Mm.
and really just taking that for granted, to be honest. Because before all this happened, um, I would I'd be in Cambodia, and then I'd on the spur of the I literally on the spur of the moment I was like, oh, I want to move to Thailand. Oh, I know people in Chiang Mai. Oh, literally the next day, uh, went to the person I was working for and said, I'm moving to Thailand. Bye, and then just got on a plane. And it was the same with my parents. I always knew I could just get on a plane. They could get on a plane over here. When I had my emergency operation, my parents literally got the phone call from my wife, dropped everything, literally got on the next flight to Indonesia, and I woke up in hospital, and they were standing at the foot of the bed. So, you
Wow.
know, um, but that world, that level of that ease of traveling, I doubt we'll ever get that back the way it was.
Yeah, that's scary. I've been
You
thinking
know,
about that a lot. You and I have been traveling a lot.
mm,
And so, yeah, we took it for granted a lot. I mean, everyone did. And
mm,
I've been thinking, especially now that I've moved here, I'm thinking like, if I knew this would happen, what would I have done if I was in Lithuania or
mm,
Bali and I
mm,
had like a potential thing open? I would have just said, "Oh, of course I'll stay here," something like that. Uh, and
mm.
one, oh, so you were talking about Yeah, avoiding the big picture and like sticking to what you've got right in front of you.
Yeah,
So
avoiding the news, avoiding, avoiding people talking of, all the. To me,
it's all negative.
it's not so much just going, I'm going to stick my head in the sand and pretend it's not happening. It's just knowing that the negative stuff is out there and not engaging with it, because I have had periods of time where I have felt very down. I have felt um, depressed, but then I know the things that are helping, and if I just do those and ignore the things that I can't change in any way, then it just makes me feel better to just focus on what I know. You know.
That is what Aristotle calls prudence or practical wisdom, which is,
Mm,
um, I mean, that's all we have is practical wisdom and like philosophical wisdom. Those are the two highest internal virtues of thought. That's all we have in that internal world. And the the main reason that people um, look into the big picture and watch the news or watch conspiracy videos or whatever is they're after that philosophical wisdom. They're after that deeper
mm,
truth. But like once you find it or find whatever comfortable level of that you want, once you get it, you don't need to do it anymore.
yeah,
You got
because
yeah.
that kind of stuff. And sorry about the noise in the background. That kind of stuff, it's not helping you lose weight. It's not helping you eat better. It's not helping you grow your bank account or your Bitcoin portfolio or whatever. It's just stressing you out. And I think that in a perfect world where this was happening, you'd be able to turn on the news and you'd have a politician lifting weights and going, "Come on, everyone, let's get healthy." Or you turn on the news and somebody would say, "You know what? It's actually for a lot of people not as bad as you think it is, and let's look at some positive.
Mm.
Let's have some positive vibes. If it, but the old adage, if it bleeds, it leads." Um, uh, and I look back now and I think, I mean, because I studied journalism at university, and part of me looks back and thinks, why did I do that? But I think at least it did give me insight into just the mind of a journalist, the mind of a newspaper owner, and it's just a dark, empty
It
place.
it could I could actually see how a journalism degree would be better than many other degrees because for one, you'd get a solid basis in critical thinking.
Mm,
I would
mm,
think like how to investigate something. Now, unfortunately, the once again practical wisdom, the actual practice of journalism is just it's hell. I mean,
yeah,
look at every real journalist who does a good job, like what's it, Julian Assange.
mm.
Like that's what he is. He's like a
Or
really really good journalist. So he gets really really arrested and locked
yeah,
up and
and
executed. They're
and
trying to.
I think that modern and I don't know what it was like back in the day, but definitely modern journalists. Modern journalists are a very specific breed, and they're kind of from the same background that I am, kind of like uh, upper middle class, university educated, um, uh, no real kind of experience of the real world, but they have this idea of themselves as defenders of truth, defenders of democracy, defenders of the downtrodden, when all it is, like 95% of journalism is copy and pasting some.
It's business. That's what they're
It's just
actually doing.
business.
They're just
It's
making profit.
advertising. It's just
Yeah.
business. You know, it's just, oh, you go on the PR websites, you copy and paste your thing, you da 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 da, and then you sprinkle in a few hit pieces. You know, you go and track down the guy who some guy did an okay sign. Let's camp outside his house and ruin his
Yeah,
life.
that
Um,
okay sign thing is so nuts, man. They're so desperate
um,
to be vicious.
and I just and I wish you could like take those journalists and go, right, you're going to spend 6 months in Mexico reporting on the cartels, or you're going to spend 6 months in Indonesia reporting on illegal palm oil, the illegal palm oil business or the illegal logging business, because there it's not, oh, somebody's going to write a mean comment on Twitter about me. Somebody's going to put a bullet in your head. So Western journalists, 99% of them, they're trash, and they think they're just these wise, brave defenders of democracy when they're just lapdogs of fucking Rupert Murdoch and who's the guy who owns New York Post? Does Bezos own Bezos and all these people?
Probably.
And then, it's time to write another article about how being obese is healthy, and it's time to write another article about article 7046 of the day about how white people are just intrinsically evil, and if you're born white, there's nothing you can do about it, and you should feel horrible about your existence because of the
Yeah.
color of your skin.
This
Okay.
this is
Thank you very
the
much, mainstream media. Thank you. This is all,
this is the upside down where good is bad and
or
bad is good.
hey, eating meat is bad. When hey, guess what? I know for a fact in my tiny brain, when my diet is mainly meat and eggs and fruit, I feel fantastic. And when my diet is mainly other stuff like bread and pasta and potatoes and whatever, I feel terrible. So all this advice that the journalists are giving me, and the diet one is just, I know it's between different people, it's different, and different diets suit different people. But I'm specifically talking about how in the media they're like, hey, don't eat the red meat, eat these bugs. Hey, bugs are the new superfood. Like, or they'll say, oh,
So
hey
look,
guys, in Asia they do it. In Asia they eat the
Jim,
bugs. No,
Jim,
they don't. No,
the,
they
the
don't.
the fundamental problem I think you're alluding to at a very deep level, or I mean basic, at a very basic level, is where do you get your truth from? Is it from the media, which basically means a talking head, a voice? And it's worse than that. It's not like it's one thing if you just like find someone you like and you think they're smart and you just blindly go along with what they say. That's one thing. But to do that with someone on a screen that you've never met in person, that's doing
Yeah.
it purely to get paid, and like you kind of know that they're lying to you, like by definition, that's really, really, really dumb. I don't think you can get more dumb than that. Whereas what I do is I get my truth from myself, from my own intelligence, and it's a skill. Intelligence is a skill, so it's really hard at first, but once you get the hang of it, it gets easier and easier and better. So for example, the diet issue, it's not a controversy at all for me. It's which category do you use? So in terms of physical health, I would say what Hippocrates said, which is that every body is different. For Jim, it could be meat and eggs and fruit, and and his physical body is fine. And for another person, it's something else. But then another category is ethics. So is it ethically equal eating meat versus eating a vegetarian diet? No, sorry. You are going to be accruing some bad karma for eating meat. But
Well,
I'm not
we
going to
can,
preach about that. I'm just
yeah,
telling you that's what's happening.
that's true. But then we'd be here all day because then I talk to you about the processes that are involved in like things like soy and the amount
Right.
of land
It's
that it
all
takes to
bad.
grow the
It's
vegetables and put
all
the water
bad. Right.
table, and,
So
so
we're talking about lesser evils. It's
yeah,
like, yeah, because like meat comes from a sentient being, and
yeah,
spinach is also a being.
mm,
There's a soul in every head of cabbage, and you're killing a soul, but it's a really small soul. And
oh yeah, yeah,
cows and pigs, they have feelings
yeah, that's
and
true, that's true.
emotions, and there's just a little bit more sentience there, so
Oh
there's a
yeah,
little bit
yeah,
more bad karma for killing them and eating
yeah,
them.
yeah.
And
So
even within that category of eating meat, there's different ways to mitigate those
yeah,
ethics. So like
true.
Native Americans, they I really like their meat eating scheme, so to say. It's not even, they wouldn't call it that. It's just their religion. It's their way of life. They respect nature. So if
Mm,
they're gonna kill something like a big bison or something that they know how, like, what the meaning behind that is. That's a very grave thing to do. So they use every single part of that animal. They don't let anything go to waste
mm,
as a show of respect. And they'll probably say some mantras, some prayers before. And, so that mitigates whatever, bad karma you'll get from it.
yeah. And I think like when the difference between when you have a conversation like this, it's from a place of like you're trying to get some mutual understanding.
Mm.
Whereas when the media puts a story in front of you and says, um, get rid of, like, you need to get rid of all of this kind of food and just eat this kind of food. To me, that comes from, that's like malevolent because, like you said, it's different. For different people, different diets will suffice. So I just think that as the main thing for me is trying to limit the consumption of media, trying to stay away from all that stuff because it's poison. It's just mind rot.
Absolutely. In terms of, so in the sort of yogic or Vedic language, we use the term physical body and subtle body.
Mm,
So like the subtle body, in this is why I really like these words, because it encompasses everything we already have, but it's more simplistic. It's easier to work with. So the subtle body is your mind, it's
mm,
your intelligence, it's your ego, it's all that stuff. And the mainstream media is toxic to the subtle body in the same way that processed sugar is toxic to the physical
mm,
body.
mm.
And so if you in general, you want to be healthy, which is the opposite of dis-ease. You want to
Yeah.
have ease in your system, in your day-to-day, moment-to-moment consciousness. So just stop with the toxins and
Mm,
start doing more healthy, wholesome things. For
yeah.
example, so now that I'm living in, like, where I'm living, it's not just rural. Like, we're doing farming here.
Yeah.
We're growing our own food, and we've got a few milking cows, not that many, but and the temple nearby, or at the center, the hub is the temple, right? And we have an outdoor furnace there, which is really
Mm,
cool because my our fearless leader here, he calls it the Cadillac of heating a building, because
mm,
the um, so you throw in some firewood, which is plentiful. There's so much wood trees everywhere, and that heats up the water, and then the water flows through the foundation of the building. There's water pipes through there, and then the heat will just rise throughout the rest of the building. So it actually, and like, if you're in a Eastern temple, Hindu, Buddhist, whatever, you're probably going to be barefoot in the temple, and it's going to be like a nice
Tiled
like
floor.
stone tiled floor. Yeah. And so you'll have warm feet, and that'll warm up your whole body. And the body the body of the temple is heated efficiently, and it's free. It only costs the labor of making firewood. Now, the thing is, if you want to have a cozy winter, you need firewood. And if there's a dozen, 3 dozen, 500 people in the community using this furnace, you got to start cutting all that wood up as soon as the winter's over for the next winter. And so like we're doing that. We still have a lot of work to do. And we got like 5 different chainsaws going at the same time. And when you have something like that on your plate, you don't have time to think about, oh, the guy said something I didn't like to me yesterday.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that I've kind of noticed, whether it's because I'm on different forums that kind of connect me to different cultural interests back in the West, but people still kind of talk about personal things, and there are more people growing their own food. There are more people deleting their social media, and I think that for a lot of people, this has been a real chance to kind of disconnect from a lot of bad juju in their lives, and it's just, I mean, where we are now, we have a bit of space that we could probably grow stuff, but the food we get, it's all from the local market. It's all from like local farms. So I think the food that we are eating is generally pretty healthy at the moment. But I'm glad to see that a lot of people have been able to cut out a lot of this rubbish from their life. So that's at least one positive.
Yeah, another thing related to food is water, right? So when I was living with my family in Boston recently, we were on the grid with all that fluoridated water, man, and I was avoiding it, but you can't avoid it entirely, right? I mean, my friend does actually. He only drinks Poland Springs water. He just has a ton of those bottles just lying around the house ready to go. But so here and in most other rural places in America and other countries like this, you dig a well. And so I've only had well water since I've been here because that's all we got. Like you can't, like there is no town water. It's not available. Like this sucks though, because if and when I buy land here and I dig my own well, that could be $5,000 or more, because they gotta dig down really deep in the Carolinas. In Florida, it's a lot cheaper. It's like they're closer to water, but here you got to dig all the way down and you got to get an electric pump for it. But once all that's done, you got, God's water, and you just put it through a Brita filter, and it just tastes delicious. And I can tell, like, with little small subtle things about my body, I'm just a little bit healthier. Even I'm still eating like crap junk food, to be honest. So actually, that's how I can tell, because my eating habit has still been kind of a little bit better, but still mostly constant. But the water has changed, and I think it's been a big enough change where I'm like, oh wow, this is pretty cool. And now I'm getting attached to it. So like if I leave and I go live somewhere else for a while, I'm going to be like antsy to get back.
Yeah. Well, that's important. I mean, because we obviously don't drink tap water here. It's not safe to drink, and we get the big the big gallon drums. I don't know how safe or healthy that water is, but I boil most of my water because I
Yeah,
don't know. I just
that's
don't like. I don't
yeah.
like the taste of. I just don't like the taste of the water. So I boil it. I have tea. I have coffee, and I try not to just drink the water as it is.
Yep, that's a common thing. Back when I was living in Asia, like you, I'd be used to that. It's really funny how things change. Like the second time I went to China, I was in this really small little town, but it was in a really good area, in a brand new housing area. So
Mm,
actually, I brought a water tester with me for the first time, and I got 25 in that apartment, 25 parts per million, which is in the green. That's a really good score. And then
mm,
I tested our tap water in Boston. It was like 183.
mm, mm,
I was like, that's interesting.
mm. Yeah. Well, um, I think that I'm glad that I'm glad that I learned about the tap water and things like that because you know more people just need to realize that you shouldn't be drinking it. Yes, it's not going to kill you straight away, but that the fluoride is just going to mess you up, long term. So, and I think it's different in America than it is in England because I read somewhere that the fluoride content in America is much higher than in
Yeah.
England, but
Yeah, I think so because I mean, like
because I've
in
all
a country like Thailand, I don't think they even do it at all because it just costs money to do that, and they're
mm,
just like they don't
mm,
have, you know what I
yeah,
mean? Like America
so
has so much excess wealth that anyone in
mm,
charge can just flip a switch and be like, "Oh yeah, well we'll have more power," and like they're already dumb and fat
mm,
enough, and like it's just been going on for decades
yeah.
like this.
And then I think also another advantage is like how in America you have all the antidepressants and all the birth control runoff that kind of seeps into the water supply.
Hmm.
Obviously, in places like Indonesia, nobody's on antidepressants. Well,
What?
very few people are on antidepressants, and very
Yeah,
few people are on birth control. So,
yeah, yeah.
and like I said, I don't know how safe these gallons are, but I feel okay drinking them. Um, but at least you don't have the extra. Oh, let's piss out all the drugs into the water supply like you have in the US and the UK. And I read somewhere that um, scientists are studying the behaviors of fish that are in areas where these are affected, and they seem to behave in a kind of scared, cowardly way because all these drugs are getting pumped into the system. But it's like I said, you just got to be a bit smart and try and avoid those toxins like you are.
So let's switch gears for a bit, and I'm gonna read pieces from that original blog post, which I just saw. It's actually almost a year ago today. I wrote this,
Mm,
and this is um, this is really funny because this is like the second or third live stream I've done this where it's like, oh, I wrote this like 6 months or a year ago, and it's still like totally relevant, which is cool. That's what I'm looking for. These blogs are actually like essays. They're more
mm,
like writing like a philosophical essay is like super healthy for like organizing your thoughts and learning new things also in the process. There are no rights. So you can read with me at ethosandunda.com/there dash r dash no dash rights. This, or just go to the blog on the top from the media. We'll skip through some of this though. So we talked about this before. The Ethos had 0 instances of the word rights. Bhagavad Gita, a single time. Those are my 2 Bibles, actually. Everything else is a different kind of book. It's on a different level, for me at least. And I just like using this word postmodern. It's a great way to just like, ugh.
Yeah, it's a good catch-all for all the horse shit that they
Yeah.
throw at us.
So, Jim, this is what I was talking about earlier. Every infraction of human rights is also a kind of injustice. So, and the thing is, injustice or justice has a real basis to it, whereas like human rights is like the superfluous decoration on top of the foundation. So, just like, and man, this is such a huge problem with Westerners, and like even my roommates who are like, they're studying God consciousness, going to the temple with me, and it's so cool, but this basic concept they still don't have, which is like, you got to get the fundamentals right, and then you do the advanced stuff. This is like really hard for modern Westerners, but like, if instead of like getting all your fancy rights down, if you really knew what justice was and you really knew what injustice was and you really practiced it, you would see what I'm talking about, where rights is actually childish. It's actually kind of, you just don't need it most of the time. You don't need to mention rights. So I said here, the term rights was made most popular by the American Constitution and its Bill of Rights. That's definitely true for the world today, even though you could find instances of that in the New Testament and maybe the Middle Ages in different Christian circles. They would talk about this. And yeah, guess what? I love the American Constitution. I love the Bill of Rights. I think it's all great, but you have to actually follow it for it to work well. And that's not happening in America. It's very rare that happens to the T. And I also wanted to mention Jordan Peterson. I know you and I are not super into him anymore. Maybe you were never into him, but one really cool thing he did, and this is still relevant, what he said, because it's true, is that responsibility matters way more than rights. And responsibility falls under the category of ethics. What you're responsible for is what you can get karma for, So, like, if you're responsible to make a certain action and you do it the wrong way, that's unethical. That leads to injustice, and it has to be corrected. And that correction is called justice. And so, yeah, just a few more paragraphs here. According to Ethos, my book, which was written by Aristotle, this all is within chapter 8. It's all different variations on justice, different ways that can manifest. So here's a cool thing. Is there anything guaranteed to every single human being? Because that's kind of what we mean when we say rights. Well, not really. So, like, let's say a human being is that thing that has 2 arms and 2 legs. That's not true. Some people don't have 2 arms and 2 legs. So you have to keep looking deeper and deeper until you get a definition of what a human being is, and then you can know the rights of every human being. So Aristotle says that we are the human being is the soul which has free will and rationality, basically, whereas animals have some desires and willpower, but they don't have free will and they don't have rationality. So the best human being is the most rational human being that exercises his or her free will as best as possible.
Yeah,
And that's not our right. That's just like,
yeah, it's more like you're taking responsibility. You're not waiting for somebody to make a decision for you. You're not waiting for someone to give you permission to do something. And I think that you're happier if you're taking these important decisions in your own hands. You know, so I definitely, you know, as much as I'm not really into Jordan Peterson, that line about responsibility, that's the key. You know, yes, you know, you have the right, the freedom to go out every weekend and enjoy yourself and spend your money, but you have the, you know, if you're smart, you have the responsibility to yourself to save that money and not waste it, and you have the right to let yourself be, you know, eat as much junk food as you want and get up to 300 pounds, but you have the responsibility to look at that and go, well, that's not right, that's not healthy, I'm going to sort myself out. You know, because the more responsibility you take, the less you have to worry about, because like you said, rights is just this big abstract concept. You don't have to worry about that because you're just worrying about your own responsibilities and you're just completely focused on that.
So I think when we talk about universal human rights, I think it'd be more useful to talk about universal human desires.
Yeah,
so like
because that's what it comes down to.
yeah, but pretty much like, so in the Constitution, that's like the first line of the Declaration of Independence, I think, is like every human being has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Oh my God, there's so many problems with that sentence. Now that I see it, it's like, no, you don't have a right to your life. Even like, you can die tomorrow. That's up to God. That or at least the laws of material nature. That's up to chance. You don't actually have that right. If you're alive, you're alive. If you're dead, you're dead. That's actually how reality works, right? But we do have a desire for life, for liberty with our life, and a desire to pursue happiness as we see fit, as long as it doesn't harm others, right?
Yeah.
So we do have these. Yeah.
But then at the same time, you have to recognize that, yes, sometimes this desire, it might feel good to do these things, to indulge those desires, but ultimately, a lot of this stuff is leading you down the wrong path and it's not benefiting you. And like, you know, like we were talking about earlier, how people have realized, oh, I need to cut certain things out of my life and streamline it to things that are actually important. And I think that's the big problem with a lot of the West in particular, is just, it's all about desire. It's like, you know, it's not enough about structure and discipline and, you know, stuff like that, which is something in the East, it's kind of, the framework is there. It's all set up for you pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what happened where we completely lost, because like at this point it kind of doesn't matter. Like on the one hand, like if we were to find out exactly the history of like, oh, we had it good for a while and this is what happened and it's bad, and if we fix that problem again, we can, you know, go back there. But that's just one way to go back, because now that everything's broken, if it does get fixed again, it can happen in many different ways. It's more beautiful now that like in this like deeply broken and time, it's ripe for revolution, and in revolution can come a new way of doing things. Like, for example, America, which was founded on a revolution, which I hold as like a good, you know, intention. At least like it was good for like, you know, 50, 100 years. But like after that, it just like, you know, degraded super quickly.
Well, I think the degradation, whatever you want to call it, it can be basically linked to two things. Number one is the kind of post World War II euphoria that kind of coming out the other side. I'm speaking from like an English perspective, and suddenly the economy got so much better, rationing ended, and the younger generation who were born in, say, like the late 50s, who had never known rationing, who had never known war, they stepped into the 60s. They came of age in the 60s when suddenly it became so much looser and freer and not as disciplined. And that's when it started to.
Yeah, I agree. That's when it, although I would just add that's when it accelerated. But actually the initial seed, I think, may have happened before the Enlightenment, 300, 400 years ago, meaning the Italian Renaissance was the last time the Western world was ethical, disciplined, religious in a good sense, and living in reality, living within the confines of reality as it is. But then once the Enlightenment came around, it was all, oh, we can just, like, truth is just this rational thing that we can just figure out, and we don't need traditions as much anymore, and we can just have science and we don't need anything else. Like,
Well,
that's, you know what I mean?
yeah, but I think if you compare 1930 in the US and the UK to 1850, the differences are smaller than if you compare 1930 to 1972 or whatever. So I think that, okay, the Enlightenment
Oh, okay.
the Enlightenment, yes, it might have been the start of it, but you still, pre-Second World War, you had a society that was kind of
Yeah.
the focus was still on
I
the real
agree.
deal.
I agree. Especially with like social things like
Yeah.
marriage and children and parenting, like those
Mm,
fundamental things were like totally still there in the 1930s and pre-World
yeah.
War II. But then the 60s, that's
Yeah.
when all the social changes happened. And
Yeah.
once that social degradation happened, basically we killed the family, man.
Mm,
Like we killed the church and we killed the family. And like what else is there but Hollywood? The
mm,
media. That's all we
yeah.
have left is the media, and the media sucks. So we have nothing.
Yeah. And then the second part of that is, and I know it's not exactly politically correct to say this, but mass immigration, especially in the case of England, importing millions and millions and millions and millions of people who actively despise us. Probably not the greatest recipe for social cohesion. And America had you had the Hart-Celler Act in 1968, which made it a lot easier for these kind of things to happen. But again, generally, if you have a more homogenous society, you have a more harmonious society, and that to me, that's the second element. Or at least if you have a diverse society in a sense, like Indonesia. Indonesia has Muslims and Hindus and Christians and different kind of ethnic groups, tribal groups. But they have a shared sense of history because they all joined together and they fought the Dutch and they fought the Japanese. And when they got their independence, their country was basically founded on, yes, okay, we do have our differences, but we're bound together by our shared history because our grandfathers struggled together and fought together, and our communities struggled together and fought together. Whereas in the modern West, I have nothing personal against a Somalian or a Pakistani who chooses to come and live in England, but we have no common ground whatsoever. There is nothing, like there's no common ground whatsoever. And then to just say, okay, let's all just live together in this tiny, tiny island and pretend that this is like making us stronger is false. It's that phrase, diversity is our strength. It's like
It's it's so asinine because the more diverse you are, the less there is an hour. There isn't even an
yes,
hour
yeah,
to speak of. There's
you
no
know,
us.
it's not even that phrase isn't even diversity is neutral. If that was the phrase that was bandied about, I could kind of go, okay, I can see what you're trying to go for, but it's our strength. It's not. It's fundamentally not strength at all. And those, so yeah, mass immigration and the degradation of family and spirituality in the West, and it's fucked. Like, but like I said, on a micro level, I think more people they're they're starting to reconnect with things that really matter, and I'm glad to see that. Um, with your what you're doing, I've seen what other people are doing. I'm kind of on my own journey, but as a whole, you can't go back to the way it was like on a mass scale. We're too far down the road. Most people.
Mm. Yeah, I've been really lucky recently. I got my first paid client as a wisdom coach, and
Good.
yeah, he's a really cool guy. He's older than me, and
Mm.
he's in Nigeria now. I think he's like
Oh yeah.
I think he's English originally though. But
Mm.
anyway, the Lord rewards as long as you stay to the path. You get, whatever it is you deserve to get. So look, Jim, I just want to finish reading this so I can stop the screen sharing, and then I want to
Oh.
talk about China because
Mm-hmm.
China has many good. China politically has many good examples of like human rights and like different things like that. That it's just like it's a good stark contrast to work with. But anyway, like we were talking about, the universal human desire for happiness, pursuing happiness.
Mm. Mm.
So if I infringe on another's ability to pursue happiness, am I infringing on their rights? No, it just means I probably committed an unjust act or an injustice. And this happens all the time. And it happens all the time. But by that, I mean like there's minor infractions that happen all the time that you can't even report to authorities because they're just so minor. But if it is something so big and important, we already have stuff to deal with this. It's called the law, the court, etc. So another trend that's happening is, you know, uh, of course, emboldened by the media, is people are saying, "Oh, like, but it's my right, so like someone needs to like give it to me, or I'm gonna just go take it myself." And it's like, no, like we've already figured this stuff out. So like if like with hate speech, for maybe this is a good
Mm.
example, like um oh, he's saying he's saying hate speech against me, and I need to go on your TV show and talk about it. It's like, look, if you were actually hurt by this, call the police, and like and they'll figure this out. Like maybe it was slander or libel or like what's it called, like intent to commit violence, or like it's already so well coded out in most of these like modern Western first world countries. Like even in these like Western countries, you don't need to talk about rights because it's so well coded already. It's such a good system, but it's a good system full of bad people, basically. And what sucks about bad people is they really don't want to hear that they're bad people. They really think that
Mm.
they're good people, and that's why they're so bad.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, so I had talked about that before. The Bhagavad Gita ethics is there almost is no ethics in the Gita. It's basically like we're bliss. We're just like eternal bliss. So and that's already us. We just remember it and get in contact with it, and that's good. And then things that take us away from that, toxic things, are bad, and we just like don't do those anymore. And there's definitely no rights. And the only thing that God gives us is free will. That's about it. And you can do with that free will whatever the hell you want. So, do I have a right to kill another man? Like, I don't even know what that means. I have the ability to,
Mm.
like, with my own two hands. I don't even need a weapon. I can just do it, like, a lot. But there's going to be consequences for that. Even if you write it into like some law. Oh, Alex, Ethos Ananda guy. Yeah, man, everyone else doesn't have the right, but he does have the right. He can go murder people. And what's going to happen? Eventually people are going to be like, "Hey man, stop killing us." And they're going to fight back and I'm going to be done for, because that's reality. And
Mm.
reality requires responsibility and ethical, thinking and behavior, and not just like demanding things of reality. So
Yeah.
in closing, there are no human rights, no animal rights, there are no rights. Now here's the key. There is right and wrong, but there are no rights. So a lawyer may talk about the Bill of Rights. You can use it legally and that makes sense, but that's about it. In terms of reality, in terms of nature and God, there are no rights. There are people, and people are, individual souls with free will. And we can use that free will to be virtuous or vicious, divine or evil. That's all, folks. Any refutations, Jim? Do you care to
No,
destroy me? Do you think
no,
you
I think,
submit to the truth, don't you?
yeah, you speak a lot of sense. And I think, like, yeah, people just need to chill out. People need to take responsibility. People need to stop uh, obsessing over this idea of rights, and they just need to lead a better life, Um, and
It could be because so many people are suffering, like
mm,
suffering so much, and they don't know how to get themselves out, that they're defaulting to this childish behavior of just like gimme, 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 and like I'm
mm,
entitled, which is just
mm,
childish. And it's fine to be childish when you're a child, and it's fine to be childish when you're an adult like me, teaching children, and you're like doing it for fun or whatever. But
mm,
when you're an adult and you're childish, but you think that you're not childish and you're actually very mature and people need to follow you, it's like, that's not going to
yeah.
work.
Well, I think as well, a lot of people in the West, you lead like an extended adolescence,
Yeah.
where now, if you're in your early 20s, you're still seen as somebody who's inexperienced and they don't know what they're doing. Whereas in the old days, you were 20 and you were a
You already
man.
had you had a few kids already,
Yeah,
and
you
you
have
had a
kids, you got a
job and
wife,
a career and a
you pay
wife.
taxes. So
Yeah.
I think people have been kind of infantilized so much that they're scared to kind of really take responsibility, and also a lot of people with things like social media, um, they believe that it's their right to kind of uh, you see it all the time, where people will viciously attack someone, and you just think, just turn off the computer, step away, and refigure your mind. If you're so wrapped up in what other people are doing, you need to reevaluate. So
So
people just need to chill the fuck out.
yeah. So today was a cool day. I woke up at 4 a.m.
Mm.
by accident, but then I actually decided to go to what we call Mangalarati, which is the morning program, which starts at 4:30 every
Oh yeah.
morning.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've gone since I've lived here. So anyway, the conclusion of that story is that I'm going to be logging off soon. But I do want to mention one thing about China, which is, about the Uyghurs, right? So many people, like, for instance, my guru, who I met in person recently, that was really cool. But I think I have fundamental differences with him because I think he still really thinks this whole Western thing is going to work. And I just think it's like doomed to fail. But anyway, he's saying, oh, China, like they're not following human rights and they don't have this like tradition of like rationality and logos that like kind of the West has. And I agree with the second part. You could say that I would say China is a dharmic country, just like Japan and India, like the whole Eastern world is dharmic. It's about duty. It's about social status and yes, they are rational people because they're humans, but they don't care that much about it compared to just doing their duty, being a good family member, being, stuff like that. But anyway, what does it mean that China is infringing on human rights? So from their perspective, from my perspective, of their perspective, I guess, the Uyghurs are like separatist / terrorists, and they're threatening the harmony of the nation. And I would say that any sovereign nation does have the right, which of course we just, agreed that that's a nonsense word. So any sovereign nation has the ability and the justification to take action on separatist members of their nation. The only thing I would just say is that the way in which they're doing it is bad. So, but it's not infringing on, because like, yes, every individual human has the desire to live freely without being just like pulled into a concentration camp. We don't want that to happen. I don't want it to happen to myself or yourself or anyone else. But the nation,
but it's
and
not
the
our
lead,
responsibility. It's not our. And this is the problem.
exactly.
This is the problem with. I know that war is business, and that's the main thrust of why we do these things. But for many people, they look at these places like Afghanistan and Iraq and China, and they go, "Oh, look, the governments of those countries are being mean to the people in their country and doing terrible things. We need to bomb them flat. We need to send them back to the
more mean.
Yeah, we need to be like more mean than they've ever been. It is not our responsibility. Yeah. So right, the Taliban, yes, okay, they wanted to cut people's hands off and they wanted to stop women from driving. Yeah. Would I want that in my own country? No. But wasn't any of my concern. Iraq, Saddam did terrible things. The Chinese doing terrible things to the Uyghurs. But guess what? It's not up to us. It's their own. They have their own agency to figure that stuff out for themselves. Okay, and just the solution that everyone wants of let's just go to all these countries and bomb them flat and install a puppet government and pretend everything's okay. It just doesn't work, So eventually, this will die down because unlike Afghanistan and Iraq, the US can't just go over there and take over and put their people in charge. But it's just another example of the West going, oh, we're so advanced and we're so enlightened. Why can't you be more like us? You should be more like us. When Afghanistan, they should have left them alone. Iraq, they should have left them alone. China, they're going to leave them alone because they're just too big. They can't.
Yeah.
We can't do anything. So.
Yeah, and it's sad we can't do anything, and we know what's going to happen. It's the same thing that happened to Tibet. Xinjiang and the Uyghurs. They're going to be a conquered race of China. But those of them who were able to get out early are fine, and those who are able to submit early are also fine. And I don't say submit in a bad way, because it all depends on what you're doing, who you like, the situation. So like if you're like a Muslim Uyghur there, and you're not like, you're just a simple person who wants to sell vegetables on the street corner. And what is the Chinese government saying? They're basically saying, just speak Mandarin, set up a
And
WeChat
shave.
account. Yeah, shave your beard. You look weird.
Yeah.
You have to pay
And
some
then-
taxes. That's it. And if they do that first, they'll be rewarded. They can still do what they want to do, and they'll be rewarded. But of course, there's the negative thing, which is that eventually their language and culture will die off, and that is horrible, I think.
Yeah, but I think that they're always going to have that kind of. There'll be a secret level where people will still want to practice certain things with religion, certain things with language. Yeah, it's bad what's happening, but their will to survive, their will to get through this will keep those traditions intact. But it is not my problem. It is not my business. It's not the business of any Western government to go, hey, that's bad. We should, because by that logic, the US should have been carpet bombed with nuclear bombs a long time ago, and the UK
Oh,
should
absolutely,
have been,
absolutely,
so
yeah.
we shouldn't start pointing fingers at people. We should go, the world is bad. On a grand scale, bad things happen, but it's their choice, right?
By the way, there was a really good example of what you're talking about. I can't remember the details because I genuinely don't care. But it was like a Chinese foreign minister said, he just threw it right back at the West. He was like, hey, you guys have been doing this double standard for a whole time, and we're just going to do it on you now. Sorry. Like, you guys have been acting like assholes, so we're going to, like, what? What are you going to do?
And that's the way it should be. Just like what I said earlier about the health thing, I wish I could turn on the TV and see a politician just lifting weights, being a real person, raw. That's what I like about Asian politicians, because they don't give a fuck. You have people like Duterte, the Filipino guy, saying, "Oh, Barack Obama's married to a man," which he is. Michelle Obama is a man. Everyone.
Michael Obama.
Michael Obama. So, yeah, if we just have a little bit more honesty, just like, that's another thing that the West is lacking. Just a little bit of, you just go with your gut, you're honest, the world will be a simpler place.
And honesty is so deep. It's not like there's the superficial level where it's like, oh, I didn't steal 11 cookies from the cookie jar. I stole 7 cookies. Oh, look, I'm honest. Oh,
yeah.
There's the internal moment to moment, like spiritual honesty where you really look at yourself and you go, and you humble yourself constantly.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is one of those things in the West where, like, if somebody says something offensive to you, maybe you should take that not just as, oh, they hurt my feelings. Maybe I need to self-reflect.
Yeah,
so,
maybe you should actually listen like they have something to say, and
so
not
maybe
just
if you are some polyamorous, trans, non-conforming binary, maybe if somebody calls you a queer or a faggot, maybe you should look at that and go, hey, I am a weirdo. I am a, maybe that should set off a process in your mind of, this is not normal. If people look at me and say I'm not normal, I shouldn't try and destroy their life by getting them fired. I should go, that person has an opinion about me. Maybe that opinion is slightly correct. I have the right to be offended, and that's the end of it.
I made a new word up recently, double trans. Because they're always in this upside down world. They're always competing to see who can be more victimized. So like
Yeah,
double trans is like I transitioned and I transitioned again. I'm double trans.
it's across the board. It's just a mess. Like those, and I feel sorry, but I genuinely feel sorry for the kids who their parents, they put them on the puberty blockers, and then the kid gets to like 18 or 19 and then realizes no, they don't want to be trans, or they don't want to be this, or they don't want to be that. Like that's another aspect of the West that from here, looking at that kind of thing, you just think that kind of sickness, it just, we didn't have that when society was spiritual. We didn't have that when we had good families. We didn't have that kind of stuff when people were more disciplined.
Honestly, like just good parenting can solve. Like if the generation now of like 5-year-old kids, if 100% of them just had like solid kick-ass parents, like we're straight. We just got to wait till they're grown ups.
Instead, we're raising generations of spineless faggots, So and you need a backbone. You need some spiritual fortitude, because life is not going to be a box of chocolates for these people. These perpetually offended people who bang on about their human rights, or bang on about, oh, I'm going to cancel you because you said the wrong word.
Yeah, well, speaking of which, I don't want them to cancel me for the language you've been using today. But I also know, I'm not upset, but I'm just, it's a concern. This is one of those things that like, this is now part of my professional thing. It's like I don't know what to do with it, but because there's a crazy balancing act. Like where all the money is like news. So like if I were to like start a news channel where I had to just take all that same headline things they're talking about and like do like and just like make funny notes about it and like maybe like one sentence about Aristotle or something I care about, but the rest of it is like an act. Then I can get 1 million subscribers and like do different things.
Well, this is the thing. Like it's just turning this into just comedy, because it ultimately is just an absolute comedy. If you can make some money out of that, then you should, because it's ludicrous. We live in ludicrous times, but you just have to stay switched on, and that's how it is.
Yeah. So that's about it for tonight. Jim, do you have any recommendations, suggestions for what we might talk about next time?
I think maybe if we just, I don't know. I think maybe something not COVID related, trying to, or something that's not as heavy. I don't know, because it's good to talk about these things. It is interesting, but like I said, I think focusing too much on negatives and not enough on positives is not always good. So just something maybe light and breezy. I don't know. It's up to you.
Light and breezy. I like that. I'm thinking like, I'm just like a light and breezy personality. So like, this is why I think it's like very few people I've met actually get me. Very few people, because like I talk about all this heavy stuff, but I do it. It's so light for me, so it's really confusing. And they're like, "Wait, is this like, is he LARPing or is this real or like is this possible?" Like, what's going on?
I think and it's one of those things where you're one of these people who you're able to just see the world in a different way to most people. And, you know, there are people in my life who are kind of like one aspect of your personality or another aspect, but you bring together a lot of different things. So yeah, but no, whatever subject you want, I'm down with. I'm easy.
Cool. Yeah, we're both easy in that way. I'm glad you see that about me, because that's exactly what I aim to do, and following my grandfather's footsteps and his grandfather before him, going back to the Italian Renaissance, which reminds me of the background behind me. And you know, that's what my brand is all about. Ethos is the West, Ananda is the East, and we're bringing that shit together. So, and yeah, that's cool. I'm so tired. I gotta go.
Well, go to bed, mate. Get some rest. Good to talk to you.
Yes, you too, Jim. Hope things are so cool in Indonesia. Wish I could be there.
Well, we'll meet again one day.
Yes, we will. Okay, goodbye, everyone. Have a good one. Stay wise, stay human. Don't be one of these subhumans out there. Bye-bye.